Welcome to 217 Kalak YT. The military, who were being lowered a distance far from the battlefield, and upon landing, the officer turns to look at the massive gate that had opened up in the sky, wondering what was happening. Back in the battlefield, the invaders slowly started to descend on Earth, and in front of them was a massive stone titan who was coming straight toward Jinwoo. Seeing him alone, he mocks him, asking if he came here to take on a whole army all by himself, to which Jinwoo tells him to look closer, asking if it really looks like he was alone. All of a sudden, a shadow appears from Jinwoo that gradually starts to cover a massive amount of area, and from that darkness appeared the army of the monarch in all its glory. It was so epic that I got goosebumps while reading it myself. Back in the story, the massive titan's expression changed, and all his confidence faded away as he saw the army that was standing in front of him, and hears Jinwoo saying, "Let's begin." The scene shifts to the USA White House, where the president was seen sitting in his office, terrified of the situation that was happening in the world right now. He thinks about what he was informed, that a rift formed through a clear sky, and from that, unidentified objects began appearing. He thinks that this is an unprecedented crisis and wonders if they would be able to contain this situation that has never before been seen or heard by anyone, without mentioning it to the citizens. The story shifts to a few minutes earlier when the army officer came to inform him about the situation. As they arrive in the conference room, he showed them the footage of the battlefield that was taken by their surveillance drone, and looking at what was on the screen, all of them started to panic, wondering what was happening over there and who was that person standing in the middle of it. They ask him about the man's identity and where their troops were when all of that was happening, to which he tells all of them that he also wants to know the answer to those questions. Back in the battlefield, Tusk prepares to launch an attack on the enemy, and seeing him doing so, the enemy didn't even move, thinking nothing of him. But in the next second, the battlefield filled up with their screams as he disintegrated all of them like flies. The attack was so powerful that it took out every single one of the soldiers that came in its way and created a huge opening in their lines. After that, both sides started to charge toward each other, and the shadow soldiers slowly started to overpower the army of the Titans. Seeing this, Jinwoo also joined in the fight and started to slice through all the giant rocks that came in his way. It was such a one-sided battle that the army of the Titans looked pathetic in front of the Shadow Monarch. Keeping the momentum going, Jinwoo summons all of his daggers and supercharges them with his mana, and with one signal, all of the daggers sliced through the battlefield, cutting everything in their path and started to make their way toward their leader. They managed to land directly on the leader's massive body, but at the last second, he had managed to block the blades before they could hit him and asks Jinwoo if he thinks that this was enough to take him out. But he saw something and got terrified, and in front of him was Jinwoo summoning all the power of the shadow in his hand, and slowly that darkness started to manifest a massive dragon claw. Seeing the amount of power Jinwoo possessed, the giant was stunned, and before he could react to anything, he got buried into the ground. Seeing him motionless, Jinwoo lands, thinking that it was all over, but from the dust, he hears a voice saying that they didn't think that a small planet on the galactic outskirts possessed such talent. Jinwoo saw an entity standing on the lifeless body of the giant, telling him that the fact that he needs to increase the size of his body in order to maximize his power shows how primitive his species is. The thing tells him that the Titans decrease in size when they need to fight with their full power and mocks him, saying that such a thing is only possible for the greatest warriors in the Titan race, including himself. As he was rambling about how great he was, he failed to realize that Belian had launched an attack on him from the back, and he smacks all of his arrogance out of him with one slap to his face, sending him flying into a distance. After taking him out, Belian asks Jinwoo if he was conversing with that creature, to which Jinwoo tells him no and instructs him to pay extra attention to these guys since they are so arrogant for their own good. After receiving the order, he rushes through the enemy like a beam of light, shredding all of them to pieces. The story shifts back to the USA, where all of the officials were looking at the battlefield with amazement. The president asks if they managed to uncover that man's identity, and seeing that they haven't, he thinks that this man dealt with those monsters as if they were toys and wonders how something that he has seen in movies would happen in reality. He asks if there is a way for the intelligence agency to uncover the identity of that man, to which a man sitting next to him says that realistically it may be impossible, but that is if they are talking realistically. It was David Brennan, who, in this timeline, was the director of the CIA. He suggests that they employ unrealistic means. He tells the president that they have a way and suggests that they use a certain person who can inform them of the truth that no one would have known. He was talking about Madame Norma Selner, saying that just like before, she will guide them to the right answers. The story shifts to the day of the National Student Athletic Tournament, and we see Jinwoo, along with his team, looking at something in surprise. He was looking at a muscular athlete who had also noticed him staring at him, but before he can ask him anything, he hears his coach asking why he wasn't prepping for the tournament. Meanwhile, Jinwoo had recognized him as this person as Kim Cheol, otherwise known as Iron. Looking at Jinwoo, his captain approaches them, asking Choi why he let a freshman enter his team. He asks if this was because Woo Sang-in got injured and took a break for a few months, and his team became so weak that he had to make his first year their new ace. Hearing everything, Choi tells him not to underestimate him too much, as he won't be able to keep his jaw from dropping after seeing his skills. To which he informs Choi that, just like him, they also got themselves a freak of a freshman. Meanwhile, Iron, looking at Jinwoo, started to sweat, wondering why he feels this overwhelming impulse to kneel before him, thinking that he was someone who was in the same year as him. So why was he feeling this way when he looks at him? He wonders if he is scared of this person. So, to suppress his terror, he starts shouting, and that surprised everyone. So, they ask if everything was okay. He tells them there is nothing wrong with him and approaches Jinwoo, thinking that he is getting scared by this puny guy, and to provoke him, he asks why he was looking at him like that and tells him to follow him to a quiet place. Hearing him challenge Jinwoo like that, everyone starts to cheer for him, telling him not to end his life. Ignoring their cheers, Jinwoo starts to leave with him, telling them not to worry. After coming to a quiet place, he grabs him by the collar, asking if he thinks that he is a pushover. Meanwhile, all the shadows look at him with excitement, thinking that they will have their Iron back. Meanwhile, Bellion asks Jinwoo to entrust Iron to him, and he will make sure that he would never act like this ever again. But as they look at him, they see tears coming from his eyes. He himself was surprised to see this and falls on his knees, and with a trembling voice, asks why he was feeling like this. Seeing him in this state, Jinwoo started to wonder why this was happening, as he is living as a human and not a shadow soldier, but for some reason, he feels a deep connection with him. As he was leaving, he hears Iron telling him to stop, and out of nowhere, he asks Jinwoo if what he is feeling for him is love. That catches him completely off guard, and he thinks of all the nonsense he could have said. So, to wrap this up quickly, he uses his ability on him and brainwashes him, telling him to tell everyone that they tried to pick a fight, but then coincidentally found out that he was the son of his father's friend's friend, and that's how they got around to resolving their differences. After that, he snaps his fingers and tells him to be good from now on, as he was one of the people who fought to protect the world, so he needs to take pride in that. After he leaves, Iron gets back to his senses and panicking. He starts to look around, wondering what happened to him, and hears the announcer announcing that the preliminaries for the middle school participants will begin shortly and asks all the athletes to gather on the field. The story shifts to the USA, where David Brennan arrives to see Madame Selner. He greets her, and seeing him at her door, she asks him to come in. As they enter, he notices the smell of food and asks if she was in the middle of a meal, to which she informs him that she had been entertaining another guest. Hearing that, he tells her, if that's the case, he'll skip right to the point and get out of her hair as soon as possible. Madame Selner reminds him what she told him in the past, that since that person visited her, she is no longer able to see the future, and he asks if she was talking about that story of the Monarch of Shadows. After that, without hearing his questions, she tells him that she will give him the answers to the questions that he has for her. She tells him the answer to the first question is yes, and the second question is no. He asks how she knew what he was about to ask her. So Madame Selner tells him he must be wondering how she knows his questions when she can't see the future anymore. She informs him that the answers he seeks from her are events from the past that she briefly reviewed and then gave him an appropriate response. She asks if she has to provide a proper answer to his questions and tells him she knows about the person he wishes to figure out about. However, she will not divulge any information about them, and that surprised him. So, he asks the reason for doing so, as she should know what that person is capable of, so they can't just let someone like that run around unattended. She reminds him that he saw the footage of that day as well and asks what he thinks about it. David tells her he saw a single human who took not one step back while standing before those horrifying monsters. Though his powers were frightening, he definitely saved humanity and was surprised when she tells him this wasn't the first time something like that occurred. He asks if she was saying that humanity was at risk of destruction several times without any sort of awareness of it, and thinks about everything and wonders if this person is the monarch of shadows that she told him about in the past. After that, he starts to leave, but before going, he asks if she can guarantee that the man from the footage is not a dangerous individual, to which she tells him she guarantees it. Hearing that, he takes a sigh of relief and tells her if that's the case, then he'll pretend that he never heard her talk about him. So, with a smile on her face, she offers him some cookies that she baked earlier, to which he refuses, thanking her for her offer. As he was leaving, he tells her he will come again sometime to pay her a visit. After he leaves, the guest that she was talking about earlier comes out of the room, telling her that he doesn't like that person and asks if he should go teach him a lesson. It was Thomas Andre, and hearing him say that, she reminds him that if he causes another incident outside the ring, his competition license would be revoked. He says he wants to ask a question and tells her that lots of people die via accidents, especially from car accidents, but he was able to avoid getting into an accident and lived thanks to her prophecy and asks why she saved his life that day. He hears her saying that it was because he did many good things in his past life, and that surprised him, and he asks that he, Thomas Andre, who is called the devil of UFC, did such things. After that, he asks about the video that Thomas was talking about and asks what was in that video that made a man like him come to see her, to which she tells him he saw a man who saved the world. Hearing that, he thinks that sometimes he can't tell whether this old lady is joking or serious, but that's why it's so fun being around her, and asks, what is that hero who saved the world doing right now? To which she tells him, maybe he's enjoying his youth to the fullest somewhere. The story shifts to the time of the competition, and we see a female getting ready for her run. As soon as the signal was given, she started to run towards the finish line. As she was running, she saw two competitors that were ahead of her, and the finish line was closing in. So, in the last bit of effort, she gathered all her remaining strength and started to run with everything she had, and somehow managed to win the race at the last second. It was Hunter Cha, who for some reason was also surprised with her win. After some time, she was seen sitting outside, looking at her foot, and as she removes her sock, she sees a big bruise on her ankle. Looking at it, she started to think that she did get past the first round of prelims, but wonders if she'll be able to run the rest of the races with this leg. She sat there thinking about what she should do and hears a voice asking if she was planning on covering her injury and continuing to run. Hearing the sound, she turned to see who it was and saw Jinwoo standing in front of her. Seeing him there, she wonders if he is a high schooler and hears him saying that if she ignores her injuries and runs, she might spend a whole year in physical therapy alone, and if that happens, she will become a third-rate athlete and will come to regret the decision made at that moment for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, she kept staring at him for some reason and started to think that this person has a nice scent. She thanks him for his concern, and seeing her in pain, Jinwoo tells her to stay still for a bit. Seeing him reaching for her foot, she started to panic but realized that her pain was going away for some reason. After some moments, she saw her leg completely healed. She hears Jinwoo telling her that you only have one shot, so run without any regrets. After that, as he was about to leave, she told him to stop and asks if they have met before somewhere. Hearing those words, Jinwoo thinks if he should tell her and starts to smile. He tells her to run with him, and seeing her get surprised, he tells her if she can beat him even just once in a race, he'll tell her everything. Hearing him say that, she tells him she had seen him compete and saw how he got first place in every preliminary race he entered. To which Jinwoo asks if she is giving up. She changes the condition, saying that if he wants to place a condition, then the record for the preliminaries that are about to be set, if she breaks that record, he will have to tell her everything. Hearing that, Jinwoo agrees to the condition while thinking, whether she is older or younger, she's always so pure. After that day, time moved on, and Jinwoo kept enjoying his school life along with Jinho and his other friends, and eventually, he met Cha again one day outside his school, after which they started to get closer. But he needed to prepare for his CSAT exam, for which he had to spend extra time on his studies. Eventually, that also passed away, after which we see Jinwoo walking somewhere, wondering if he came here dressed too plainly. He sees clothes in one of the shops that catches his eye, so he uses his abilities to change his clothes to match the ones in that shop and asks his shadows how he looks. After that, he was seen waiting for someone to arrive, and after waiting for a while, the person eventually arrives. It was Cha, who had come to see him after their CSAT exams. She congratulates him on completing the exams and asks if he was planning on going to the university that he told her about, and asks why did he pick that one, as he has great scores. Jinwoo tells her that it provided a full-ride scholarship and the opportunity to study abroad. Besides, there is a person he has to meet at that place. Hearing that, she asks if that person is a woman, and seeing him not answering, she gets angry. After that, she asks if he remembers his promise that he made to her, and reminds him that he promised to answer everything when she wins a race against him. After reminding him that, she points to the Christmas tree, telling him to run with her and see who gets there first. To which Jinwoo asks, what was she planning on asking him? She tells him she wants to ask everything, what he's thinking about sometimes, whether it's a girl or a guy he wants to meet at that university, and if they had met before that competition took place. Seeing her innocent face, Jinwoo gets stunned and agrees to her terms. After which, she starts to take off the scarf that she had on her neck and puts it on Jinwoo, telling him if he likes her, he can't move from this spot. After which, she starts to run towards the tree. Seeing him going with her conditions, his shadows start to tease him and tell him he can still win if he runs now. And seeing her going, Jinwoo remembers the first time they met in that dungeon and starts to smile. He remembers how, in her previous life, she confessed her feelings to him. After which, all of the pleasant memories that they shared together start to flash before his eyes, and he sees her touching the tree, saying that she won. Remembering everything, Jinwoo smiles and starts to walk towards her, telling his shadows to close their eyes. After which, he takes her into his arms. The story shifts to the world of repose, and we see a dragon greeting Tusk along with many more shadow soldiers. As he was busy making small talk with them, he notices Baru approaching him, and seeing each other, both of them start to giggle. Tusk asks if he completed the task. Baru shows him a robe, telling him it looks exactly like the hooded jacket that their liege wore a few days ago. Taking it, Tusk tells him he can never repay him for this and hears Baru saying that he can't turn a blind eye to his wish of becoming more like their master. After putting it on, he tells Baru that he likes it so much that he is almost tempted to make it every magic soldier's duty to wear this robe. After which, he asks him about the orb that was given to him by Jinwoo, asking wouldn't it be better to turn it into a staff and wield it rather than carry it around in his hand. He tells him it's a great idea and calls a dwarf, asking if he can entrust this with him to turn it into a staff, to which he agrees, saying that he is happy that he will get the opportunity to use the sacred wood that their liege bestowed upon them. After which, we are told about this world, that it's an infinitely vast place with close to 10 million soldiers residing here. Everyone lives here by assisting one another, and the soldiers are deeply connected to the mind of the monarch. As the power of the monarch becomes stronger, they begin to resemble the current monarch's mind. In other words, the soldiers who desired destruction and strive for such were starting to learn the humane side of things and gained many emotions that humans have. The scene shifts, and we see the soldiers going about their daily lives, where some were studying, others were training, and some just spending their time chatting. In this world, these soldiers began to develop non-existent characteristics and filled it with their diversity. Back in the story, we see Tusk's staff that was ready for use, and seeing how it turned out, he was very happy and praised the dwarf's craftsmanship. As they were doing that, they saw giant-type shadows approaching them, saying that the Grand Marshal Bellion told them to come to this place. Hearing that, Tusk understood that these were the magic users that were recently recruited by the Shadow Monarch. Seeing this, he decides to give a speech in front of them and tells everyone present in the room that from here on, he shall describe in detail what he had accomplished during the first battle that their great liege fought against the dragon kind, and every achievement he had accomplished in the rifts of dimensions. Just as he was about to begin, he hears a voice asking what was he loitering around here for. Hearing that, he asks who would dare to say something like that to him. But as he turns around, he sees Igris, and his tone instantly changes as he blurts out that he loves him. Igris gets surprised and tells him he is always thankful for his loyalty. After that awkward scene, he asks for the reason for him visiting and hears him saying that it's going to begin soon and asks if he doesn't think that all the soldiers above the general grade who closely serve the lead should cheer for him. Tusk was still confused, wondering what he was talking about, and follows him to see what it was. He gets shocked when he sees what he was talking about. He saw Jinwoo and Cha finally meeting after so many years. Seeing this, he gets emotional while all the soldiers present in the room start to cheer for them. Igris, seeing their reunion, recalls the first time he met Jinwoo, thinking that it was a strange dimension made from the power of the monarch, and his mission was to test him, who had entered there, since his master wanted to see if he was a human worthy enough to become his vessel. And upon receiving that command, he knew right there that this was the final order that his master had commanded him to do. Since he had lost interest in war after forgiving the rulers, he explained why he was showing this much interest in an insignificant human. So, as he received his final order, he couldn't ask for his intent or dissuade him. He could only answer that he would follow his orders. That was all he could do. Remembering that day, he recalled how he stood there alone in the strange dimension to test his qualifications, with most of his original powers sealed. Looking at his appearance, he thought that it's the form he had before he became a shadow soldier. Looking at the throne, he thought that the architect was able to make this refined stage by using the powers of the Shadow Monarch. After which, he started to approach the throne, and upon sitting on it, he wondered if he was already here and said that he would be waiting for the one to be tested. After waiting for a bit in silence, a thought hit him and he started to panic, wondering if him acting this way makes him look arrogant and disrespectful towards his master. As that human, who will be tested, has the consciousness of the Shadow Monarch inside him, it would be a bit strange to show himself sitting on the throne before him. And seeing the door opening, he started to wonder where he should stand. The doors open, and Jinwoo finds the room empty, while Igris looks at him from the side, wondering if he is the person that was chosen by him. So, coming out, he thinks that even if this mission was the last mission entrusted to him, he had no thoughts of being negligent in this battle, and if he is considered to be insufficient, then he will die by his hands. He slowly started to approach Jinwoo, thinking that he would test him, whether he is befitting of this throne or not. And as the fight began, the results were disappointing as he was busy evading his sword and didn't show any talent nor the ability to overpower him. But there was something different about this person, as in the middle of the fight, he put away his weapons and planned to defeat him with his bare hands. It was impressive courage by a human. Remembering that, he thought even if his body may not be fitting to be a vessel of the Shadow Monarch, he still honored his will alone. But despite all that, it was no use. He was still a disappointment. So he started to wonder how could this feeble being possess the qualifications to become the vessel of the monarch? After he lay motionless on the throne, he prepared to behead him for an honorable death, and as he was doing that, he in his heart felt relieved by his failure. As if he does not possess the qualification to inherit the power of the monarch, then that means that he would be able to stay alongside his master for a bit longer. But just as the sword was about to strike, he woke back up and managed to stop the blade in the final second. Seeing this, Igris was surprised by the fact that this person hasn't given up on his life till the very end, and gathering up his remaining strength, he managed to take him out. Seeing the outcome of the battle, Igris wondered how he lost just like that to a human much weaker than him. But at that moment, he saw something in him. It was just a glimpse, but his gaze resembled that of the Shadow Monarch. As he sat there, he thought that the difference in the powers that both of them had was huge, since it was a test to confirm his qualifications, but he still lost, and wondered if it was because he was careless, or was it a miracle created by his tenacity of never giving up. But more importantly, he wasn't sure if he was supposed to be happy that his master's choice had been correct. Igris remembered that after he became his soldier, he was cherished by him, and there were a few moments when he was thankful for the kindness he had felt from him. And to him, he was his master, a friend, and a comrade. After that, he fought many battles alongside him, and as his loyalty to him deepened, he knew that his longing for his previous master began to wane, and he slowly came to accept his new master. Later, his forces became much more powerful after the addition of the original Shadow Legion that was waiting for his call in the rifts of dimension. and Belian, who was his old comrade, had finally joined. But the joy of meeting again quickly passed as Belian began to be affected by his loyal yet ferocious roommate, Baru. But when he beat the living daylights out of him, it was a bit refreshing. And soon, their determination was used in the battle against the monarchs, and their new master slowly started to become skillful in battles, and they also became much stronger as well. The battle continued even after turning back time with the Cup of Reincarnation, and so about 30 years, all the enemies were annihilated, and only the Legion of Destruction was left. While fighting those battles, he was reminded of who he used to be, the wing of the Shadow Army. Yet, he followed the orders of a monarch who was once a mere human. Remembering that, Igris thought he was right. He had forgotten about that because his time with his new master was so honorable. He had lived completely forgetting his previous master. At the time when they met Wu, he wondered since when it was like this, that his previous master started disappearing from his mind, and heard Jinwoo telling him that sometimes forgetfulness is a bliss, so he thought there wasn't any need to think too hard about this. As he did not forget his previous master, though Greed and Iron, who were overlapped with the time here, and their spirits had forgotten everything and were living their ordinary lives, he was still next to his master. His feelings for him were simply connected to his new master, as he is a knight, the sword of his master, and one of the wings who lead the Shadow Army. The story shifts back to the present, and we see him helping Jinwoo with his study. Seeing that he was being helpful to him, he started to think that right now, he was the only one in his army who could assist him, not Grand Marshal Belian, who was as big as a mountain, or Commander Baru, who is only an insect. No matter how smart he is, only he, who graduated from the Knights Academy with top scores, could aid him right now. As he was thinking that, he hears Jinwoo asking if he was sure that the answer to that question was really 2. Hearing that, he started to go through all the pages and sees that he was wrong about that. Seeing that, he apologizes, saying that he will strive more for his liege, after which they continue with the study. Looking at him, Igris thinks that since his master had stepped into a new battlefield, it seems that his glorified life will continue for a bit longer. Chapter end here. For more, like and subscribe.